All right, so I like to use a larger round bat because we're gonna go all the way to the edge. So make sure to give yourself enough room. The little square bats are not gonna be enough. Make sure to give yourself a bigger bat so you can actually measure this properly and get to the width that you need. As always, we start with one tiny little dot of water right in the middle. That is our super glue. So we're gonna put that little dot there and we're going to get this baby centered. So let's make sure this doesn't fly. We don't want this to hit our neighbors, so we're gonna tap this down. We don't have to be aggressive. We just need to slightly tap it down so it's stuck and glued. So as you guys can see, my left hand is pushing and my right hand is pulling with my fingertips. So pushing with my left, pulling in with my fingertips with my right. My thumb is straight up. Very important to keep that thumb up so it doesn't end up doming in. If you guys want to go over centering with me again, I do have a YouTube video on that, so we're not going to touch too much on it today, but the main things, keeping your hands always touching and our elbows are always down. And as you guys know, if you guys have watched any of my videos, we make traffic cones, not inflatable tube men. Very important just to create balance in our piece. It's important to make it easier on you guys. Also, sometimes when you create that inflatable tube man, it gets wobbly. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, see my centering video and it will all make sense to you over there. Now that we are getting closer and closer to centered, I can feel that wobble is not really there anymore. I'm gonna do one more pull up and just double check, but I'm gonna go on and move to my next step. As we're going, I'm going to do our karate chop here and notice how I am not letting this mushroom over. This is quite a bit of clay here. I am notorious for not measuring when I'm doing like tutorial videos. This is just a giant chunk. We're making a pie pan and I am pushing this pretty far down. So pie pans, we want to be able to add a lot of width when we're opening this. So we need quite a bit of clay. I also always have a ruler with me. I want to make sure I go to, most pie pans are typically 9.5 8 to 10 inches really is what you kind of get your wiggle room with, but I like to make mine close to around 9.5 to 10 inches. Remember, these do shrink, so you do always want to make them a little bit bigger. So if you're going for a 10-inch pie pan, make sure to calculate your shrinkage ratio properly, so once it goes into the kiln twice, you know that it is going to shrink to 10 inches versus making it to 10 inches now, having it shrink, and now it's 8 inches. See what I'm saying? We want to make sure that shrinkage ratio is actually correct. So if you guys saw, I checked my thickness, made sure I'm not too far down. I want to leave room because I'm opening this pretty far. We don't want it to end up cracking. So what's really important when we're opening this is actually to really make sure that we are compressing this very flat and we're making sure that it is completely even on the base. That is the most important part when we're making these larger vessels. So I'm going to regroup that rim and then I'm going to move on to my compressions, really making sure, and also first I want to just keep checking my measurements just because I need to know that this pie pan is actually going to be where I want it to be. And this is up to you guys. Just so you are aware, it is your discretion. It wasn't as wide as I needed it to be, so we're pulling it back and we're going to do it again. And you guys can just keep doing that. And if you don't have enough clay, you end up finding your clay amounts based off of doing this exact thing when you're checking and being like, oh, I used 4 pounds for this. That wasn't enough. 4.5, 4 2/4, 3/4, whatever it is. So now we're going to move on to compressing. This is a really, really important step. These pie pans are really they're not too complex. The most important thing is that these pieces, because they are larger, they crack and they are more susceptible to breaking if they're not made properly. And that's where a lot of people go wrong with them, is they are a lot more fragile. So I really do believe in compressing. I did a video before talking about like myths on pottery. If you don't believe in compressing, Just make sure that this baby is dry enough, slowly dried, and take care of it the way that you would so your pot doesn't crack. That is a very like potter to potter certain things. So some people compress, some people don't. I do. So in every single one of my videos, you guys will see it, and I just, it's something I do. So I don't know how to throw pots without it. It's something that's super important to me when I throw. But moving on from compressing, it's just a bigger deal with these larger pie pans. Before I start my actual pulls, I actually have a little tool that I have made. So this is a little handmade plastic. It's like a hard plastic tool, and it just makes triple sure that my base is actually all completely flat. And I have a tiny little like movement on the side of it, almost like a rib, and it makes so I can use it at an angle starting from the end is actually lined up right in the middle of my piece. And as I'm pushing it down, it makes sure that this piece is completely flat. And then it kind of starts me out, showing the angle that when I do start my pulls that I will need a slight outward angle. And I really like having tools for a lot of the processes that I use. So keep in mind, all your tools need to be perfectly clean before you get started. And if you're in a studio and you don't have tools that you have made for every single pot, because a lot of people don't, a wooden rib works amazing for this process as well. So make sure your wooden rib is clean. I usually use this tool for hand building, so mine is slightly dirty. I'm gonna get the water out of my piece, and at an angle, I am going to show you guys this tool as well, just because it is a great example of you use what you have. And this is a perfectly flat object. I absolutely love the wooden tool as well. So it's like a little wooden rib, and it's one of my favorite tools. I keep it on me every single time I'm either throwing or hand building because it's so versatile. I love, 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 love that tool. So now I'm just gonna make sure I have no excess water, and I'm gonna create a little swirl. I'm doing the typical potter swirl. Don't judge me, you guys. I think it's important on pie pans, okay? Look at that little swirl. It makes me so happy. Now let's go full force and actually start creating this piece. So we are regrouping our rim, and we are creating our donut here, and we are going to create our donut pull. So my thumb is at that base, and I'm slowly pulling this straight up. Because we're gonna slowly angle this out because it is a pie pan, I want to make sure it goes straight up instead of up and in, because I know that when I'm creating it straight up, I need to be able to flare it out once this piece is done. So it's not a lot of pulls, and you want to make sure that your piece stays fairly dry as you're pulling. You don't want a lot of excess water in there. So you'll see me cleaning out the water a lot because we want this clay to be very consistent and even all the way around. We don't want any cracks, any compression cracks, anything weird. So we want to make sure that we're throwing this properly throughout the entire time. And now for the real pull, starting at the very bottom, my sponge is on the outside, my inside fingers, they aren't doing anything. They're just hanging out. They're just being a guide, so we're not pushing this in. And we're gonna pull all the way to the top and regroup our rim. And we're gonna keep doing that until we get this as high as we want, and then we're gonna flare this baby out. All right, we are at the height that I like this beautiful pie pan to be. And now we are going to use our left hand and we're going to flare this out. So my left hand is acting as a wall and my right finger. A little key tip when you're doing anything when it needs to be symmetrical or you just want to make sure you're generally kind of doing the same image or design on one thing, like on your piece, I use a round circular divider. This baby is great if you are carving or even for like pie pans. I don't use it very like perfectly for pie pans, but I like to throw it in the center just so I can kind of eyeball it and know as I'm going that this is going to be at least symmetrical in most of the way. Like I know that I'm gonna kind of see it and I'm gonna be able to visualize it and use that grid as I'm going around. And then I know that this is gonna flow very well together. The little dividers are amazing. It's an amazing tool for pottery and for all steps. So if you're throwing or if you're carving, I use it for both. Now, as I'm creating my little ruffles, keep in mind I keep dipping my fingers in water. I don't want fingerprints all over the pie pan itself. So if you slightly dampen up your fingers as you're going around, it is going to keep your fingerprints out. And I do have a specific way that I do this. My middle finger and my thumb are pulling up and my other hand is pulling it down. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I do have like a little trick for this and it works magically. Now I'm going to take a very damp sponge and I'm just going to go over those little ripples because I want to get rid of any lines that I may have created while I was creating this. Now I'm just going to go over this and really smooth it out, do my little finishing touches because this beautiful thing is pretty much done. But I want to make sure that it is actually done and good. So I'm just kind of going over it real fast. Now for the hard part is actually wiring this off. So because this is as big as the bat, the splash guard kind of gets in the way. So I actually take the entire thing off, saves me trying to fight with it or it getting in the way and I accidentally cut this in half. And we are gonna always start from the base, like all the way from the back. Make sure your wire tool is on the bat. This is the hardest part when they are so big and you're trying to wire this off. This is after you've made the entire thing. This can be sometimes where it gets ruined. So take your time cutting this off and don't hurt yourself, okay? Don't wrap it around your fingers and cut your fingers off. Like, pottery is a dangerous sport, y'all, okay? Now that that is done, we are going to dry this slowly and consistently, and hopefully it turns out to be something beautiful. I will show you at the end of this video. Now let's round to it, and I'm going to speed this one up, throw some music on, and I hope you guys enjoy. We'll do it one more time, and you guys will get to see the whole process all over again. Stay till the end. Don't lose me quite yet, because I want to show you guys what this looks like finished. All right, you guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video.